Hey, how's it going?
It's going very well, mate. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your interest.
Oh, I'm glad to be able to do it. I've loved what I've heard from you guys, and it's great to be able to talk about some brand new music from Wheel coming out on the 26th with Resident Human.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're super excited to release it finally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been such a crazy time that's been going on over the past year, and, it's just so many ups and downs have been happening in music, but thankfully one thing that has been happening is bands have been able to release some great music over the last year, and I'm glad to see that even in these troubling times that you guys were still able to release this album coming up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange time to release because, admittedly, it's not like we have a long history of releasing stuff. Like, this is only our second major album, but we've done a few bits before, and it's very strange not being able to go out on tour or have an album launch gig or anything like that. So we're just trying to do what we can online, and once all this is done, hopefully we can get out and play this live a lot.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that happens as well, too, because this album in particular really feels like something that needs to be heard in that live setting. I mean, from start to finish, there's so many great things that's going on here. I mean, I love the peaks and valleys that's going on. I mean, whether it gets heavier, whether it gets moodier, whether it shows off the instrumental sides of what you guys can do. I mean, I love everything that's going on here, and, it'd be such a shame not to be able to hear this stuff as it really should be heard in that live setting.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. I completely agree, and we definitely made the album with that in mind, that we wanted to feel like a band performing live and not bury it under too much studio trickery. We definitely went for a greater vulnerability, I think, in humanity than we did on the last records, and it's not about good and bad or right and wrong, but it just felt like the right fit for this music, and at least how it's come out, we're really, really happy with it.
Oh, so great to hear that. So, with that in mind, I mean, what was it like to start writing the second album?
It was intense. One second. We just got back from touring with Soen in Europe in 2019. I nearly said last year. That's how long this pandemic's been going on. And right away, I got started on some instrumental stuff. So I had the 5 kind of main tracks on the album. I wrote all of this between the period of mid-November 2019 and the beginning of February 2020 when we went on our headline tour. And we already had quite a nice shape for the songs, but there was a lot that happened after that because even though I'd come up with most of the core ideas, then we started tearing it apart as a group and working out how to put it back together in a way that everyone's happy with. And that takes quite a long time with a load of opinionated musicians, but I think it really paid off, and it wasn't really until we started tracking the drums and the bass that we kind of got the key angle and the unifying factor of what the music was going to be this time. And it specifically came from when we were recording the drums and bass for Hyperion, and Sunday our drummer just suggested, let's turn off the click track and see what happens. And it felt like a really big gamble at the time, like we prepared these dynamic click tracks with the various songs, and just letting go and allowing that to happen was pretty scary. But once we saw how that started to feel on the track, and it's mainly a feel thing rather than a sound thing, I think that dictated everything else we did afterwards. It definitely lent into the guitar playing, which we just left a bit looser than maybe it wasn't moving backwards deliberately. It moves and it breathes. It sounds like a band playing together rather than this hyper-corrected perfectionist studio recording. Same with the vocals. I think there's a greater degree of humanity in what we did this time than last time. And I think leaning on that, honestly, it was terrifying. We felt like we were just naked in the snow, and you could see all the flaws, and there was a period before we got the final mixes back where we were starting to think, have we made a huge mistake? Should we have been should we have played this safer? And I'm so glad we didn't, because I think it really fits these songs perfectly to have gone at it this way.
I couldn't agree more. Even with being a drummer myself and, learning how to play to a click track and trying to make everything as perfect on the 2 and 4 for so many songs as possible, I love that feeling of just being able to get together, not having to worry about a click track, and just trying to make the music as human as possible. I mean, when you're not worried about making absolute perfection going on, and you're just trying to make something that's real, I think that just comes out so much more authentic, and that's how this album has really come out.
Well, thank you so much, and we completely agree. Looking back at it now, even though it was a scary thing to try for the first time in the middle of the session, this is definitely how we want to work moving forward, and it just feels like a much better fit for the kind of stuff we want to make. I mean, we've always done instrumentals first and vocals second, and interestingly, I think the mood of the tracks has always dictated what the lyrics are going to be, and I think this greater vulnerability in the playing led to it feeling like it was okay to show more vulnerability in the lyrics too. And I think overall it's made a more authentic feeling album, to use your word.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking about the vocals in particular, I mean, loving the way that they came out as well too. I mean, I love hearing that real human feeling that's going on within the vocals. I love the lyrical content that's going on there as well too, and a lot of it strikes home for me as well too. Like in particular, Ascend. I mean, I live just a few miles away from where George Floyd was murdered, and bringing back the whole Black Lives Matter movement again last year. So being in this environment and knowing everything that happened around here and how that moved around the entire world, I mean, it's just like, it really hits home for me for how that happened. And, it's great to see around the world that, there is the right ideals that are going about that. And, just seeing that people actually do care about other humans again in, writing in 2020 and then having this come out in 2021, because we feel so separated right now. I mean, the world just feels like it's tearing apart from our different views, and it's just great to see things that try to bring us together, and I love that about this album.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, just to clarify, it's a movement that was about the aftermath of what happened after George Floyd was murdered, and absolutely, I think specifically it's about the public rhetoric and how it became this binary discussion that was emblematic of all these wider problems in society, and it stops being about the unifying issue, which basically everyone agreed about, which was, is it ever appropriate for a tax-funded law enforcement to kill someone in cold blood, who's unarmed in the street, and to kneel on someone's neck for that amount of time? And I think that was a resounding no. This is completely inappropriate, especially when it's a unionised group of people who basically tried to lie about this and minimise the accountability afterwards. It's completely unacceptable. And of course, this is specifically about the aftermath of an American issue, but it's emblematic of what's happening around the world too. Like I was speaking with some guys in France for interviews last week, and they were telling me they've had some similar instances over there. So I mean, I think this is an ongoing problem, and I'm just yet to hear a very good argument for why this shouldn't be changed. I think the real question comes back to, how should we change it? That's a much more complicated question, and I'm really glad it's not my job to figure that out. But I just think to keep the discussion moving forward, the central theme is lives matter, and I think everyone should be able to leave the house without fear that they might be executed by the police for some meaningless reason, like happened in this case, and far too many others over the past few years.
Oh yeah, and that's definitely what I meant by that too, about like us being able to unite as well, because there is so many negative things that are going on there, so many hate-filled things that are going on, and knowing that there are people out there that can see the immorality that's going on, the injustice that's going on around the world. I mean, whether it's the treatment of COVID, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's other injustices in the world, I mean, seeing that there are people and there are musicians and just life in general that realizes that there are all of these problems and just want things to get better, try to get everyone back together and not have to worry about these things, like you said, like being able to go out the front door of your home, I mean, without getting shot, without getting sick, whatever the case is. I feel those things are so important. It's great that you cover these things.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I think one of the real dangers at the moment is, no matter what the issue, like you said, whether it's COVID, whether it's something like police brutality, we end up painting this picture where everyone who disagrees with us is a dangerous lunatic that wants to kill us. And one of the great privileges of my job is I've been able to travel to many countries to play music, and I've met people from all kinds of different cultures and religions and age groups and demographics. And I think you just start to see this pattern that we're all basically the same. I think it's about 99% of our values is really, really similar. And that this 1% we fixate upon it, I think it's predicated upon by people who don't have our best interests at heart. And it's driving this wedge between society, which unfortunately has real tangible consequences that affects many people. I mean, I'm saying this again from the height of privilege living here in Finland, which where I've got a very good quality of life. I'm safe, and I live in a lovely apartment, and life is good to all intents and purposes. But I still think that it's important to discuss this and to think about what side of history we want to be on. And I think mainly it's just that all of these things are deeply human. I think tribal behaviour patterns are something we spoke about when moving backwards. And we're just seeing the evolution of that kind of fitting the new world that we're currently in. And I think we're watching what's happened in America, which has absolutely dominated both, I'm sure, your national news and a lot of our international news too. And what's come after that. It's just very interesting to see how this division has been weaponized against the public, and it's not serving anybody. I think if we all just calm down a bit enough to listen to each other, I think most of these problems can be resolved in a pretty healthy way.
Yeah, I really think that is the best course of action as well, too. It's just the sensationalism that's really happened over the past half a decade or so, and it's just been really riled up. I mean, whether it's news media, whether it's social media, whether it's listening to authoritarians who don't have our best interest in mind, like you mentioned. It's just, I mean, there's so much of that sensationalism that's going on, and it's so easy to be able to control people like that when they have these feelings that they want to go one direction, and you prey upon that, and that can separate people so much. And I just hope we can get away from that at some point. I mean, especially with hopefully getting COVID under control at some point, like just getting back together, not having to worry about the sensationalism that we didn't have to worry about so much, and just trying to get back to some kind of normalcy where there isn't so much tension around the world.
I'd love to see that happen. I mean, unfortunately, there's not a straight line path to that place. I mean, the smartest thing I've heard about how to maybe move away from this with personal responsibility is about this concept of echo chambers, where all of us are in echo chambers, and first step is admitting that we are. So all the media that I see is algorithmically tailored to me by search engines, so effectively artificial intelligence that no one's really controlling. And also by the people I surround myself with, the country I live in, what my friends think, what my family thinks, that kind of stuff. And I think step one is, if you're going to share anything on social media, which seems to be a lifeline, particularly during COVID, we need to fact check it. Step two is, if we're not going to fact check it, don't share it. And step three is to engage empathetically with people on the seemed or perceived other side, because firstly, it's ludicrous trying to present every single social issue as a binary, because very little is. Brexit's a great example, which has affected me personally as a Brit living in Finland, and both sides of that argument trying to present it as this really oversimplified soundbite, rather than trying to analyse a very complex relationship between the UK and the EU. It's kind of shocking how badly both sides behaved in the process. I mean, it's effectively propaganda when it's just people willfully lying to try and manipulate the vote in their own way. And I think it makes it very hard to trust any of the sources and what people are saying. I think it also makes making good decisions much more difficult, which has tangible consequences for all of us. And I think all of us taking a bit of a step back, like I've said already, and maybe just accepting the fact that unless you have a doctorate level in every single one of these subjects, from epidemiology to maybe economics and politics, then just accepting that whatever we think we know might not be the whole picture.
Oh, couldn't agree more. And I think, again, that is such a great way to be able to look at it. So, getting back into the album itself, too, I mean, with how much creativity that's going on there musically and lyrically, I mean, when you are writing the instrumental music together first, and then you're coming up with lyrical content, I mean, there's a lot of great things that are going on musically. I mean, whether it's the odd time signatures, the polyrhythms, or whatever the case is. I mean, like, is it a challenge for you to be able to come up with how you want to be able to incorporate the lyrics, or does that come naturally for you?
Oh, it's the worst bit by a mile. I think, especially in our kind of music, the lyrics are kind of the humanising factor, both literally in the sense that it's a human voice, not these elaborate sounds on the instruments or these complex opposing parts, but also with what we wanted to talk about. Because, I mean, the things that we think Wheel is, which I think have become a lot more clear to us over the past 12 months, are, I think mood plays a really big role, and I think groove plays a really big role, and both of those things together have kind of dictated what we think the subject should be in the songs, but trying to fit them in a way where it feels kind of effortless. A great example is in Movement, in the chorus for that, trying to find anything to put on top that felt like a natural fit was extremely challenging. We had maybe 6 or 7 drafts of different vocal ideas before I recorded those parts, and just nothing really seemed to fit. It was all too busy, or it didn't connect well enough with what was happening behind. And but we don't want it to feel like it's music homework, you know. It's supposed to be fun, and I want it to be engaging. And for people who don't know how to play an instrument or maybe don't have a music degree, we want it to be entertaining and accessible, because that's the whole point of contemporary music, right? It's supposed to be enjoyment for us. And I think we're very mindful of that, putting this stuff in. And I think for that reason, it took an extremely long time to try and find kind of the right sounding, I'm trying to think of the right word, kind of the aesthetic of what the vocals should be from track to track.
Yeah, and, you know, it's just, I wondered about that too, because when I listen to the final product, I mean, it feels so natural with the placement of the lyrics that's going on within the music, even if it gets complicated or it's more smooth, whatever the case is. I mean, it's just, I really love how this does feel like it's a well-oiled machine, but it feels so human and organic, and I think that really takes a special touch to find the right chemistry with the right musicians to be able to pull that off.
Well, again, thank you. I mean, honestly, we're just very self-effacing, and we keep going back in and tearing it apart again and redoing it. And I think we knew from when we tracked the instrumentals that we were onto something really, really good, so we didn't want to rush the vocals, and it ended up taking something like 4 or 5 months, I think, to write and record all the parts for the vocals alone. Just because we were so bothered about making that final layer be the right fit for the music. And it's about the journey. I think context and presentation is everything in this style. And but if we're asking someone to commit, say, 12 minutes of their time to listen to a piece of music, we're very aware that we're asking for a much greater commitment than most other bands are. So we really want to make sure that we're giving a lot back for that invested time.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, I do really appreciate how much effort that really goes into it. I mean, not just musically, not just the lyrical content, but also visually as well, too. I mean, I love the album artwork that's going on. I love how it just really showcases like different sides of like the human mind. I mean, whether it's like the bone face or a bit more of the gore a little bit with the eyeball coming out. And, you know, it's just like, I really love that transition when you look from like left to right. And I think that's such a cool thing to be able to incorporate with the album artwork.
So, yeah, I mean, my wife, Lascelles, has actually made all of our album artwork so far. And with the latest ones, we had this idea that the lyrics they're kind of figuratively deconstructing humanity. So we thought, why not make a literal deconstructed person as the front cover? And in terms of style, we were looking at these old Victorian medical diagrams, which they're kind of cartoon, but they're gruesome in their own right, because I think a lot of them were drawn from real life. And also just the way things are presented in museums, where it's kind of clinical and just kind of the opposite of life when you see a butterfly pinned to a board with some handwriting underneath it. And I think that's all translated really, really well for the cover, and it fits the music.
Oh, very much so. And it's great, especially when you have that at home too. I mean, the fact that you're able to get such amazing artwork from someone who clearly has the talent and knows the vision of what you're looking for as well too. I mean, when you can incorporate that and make the best out of it, I mean, again, it shows how well that's really paid off here with this album.
totally agree, and she's insanely talented. I mean, it really wasn't something we anticipated when we met, because we've been together for a long time now, but she's a big fan of the music we're making anyway, and she's been an accomplished artist in her own right for many, many years. And she just keeps knocking it out of the park, and I think this is my favourite one she's ever done, so we're really pleased with the cover.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, also visually as well, too, I love what you guys did with movement for the video as well, too. I mean, just the whole way that you went about that with, like, showing humans, I mean, whether, you know, where it either comes off like trying to be beautiful or someone getting punched in the face, you know, it's just like, it's great to be able to see that kind of vision throughout the song, because it really fits.
Thank you again. It's pretty much based on the opposite of what inspired the lyrics. So that you've got all these faceless people in forums with other avatars or aliases communicating, therefore able to dehumanize their opponents and say other horrible things, or strawman people's arguments because they're so adamant that their viewpoint is correct. And we thought, why not switch that around to the opposite way, where you've got silent faces, because there's something very vulnerable and, for very obvious ways, personal about a face. And I think just the range of moods and the different masks we put on to interact, I think all of that is one of the most fundamentally human things about community and about how we discuss and try and resolve these kind of issues. So I think all of that tied together really well. I mean, we've had the same guys making all of our videos since we started the band, and they're brilliantly talented people. This is Kakis and Kimbe from ADHD Productions in Finland. And yet again, I think they've absolutely blown us away with what they managed to capture.
Oh, definitely agreed. So when you have a song like Movement being able to come out, and you're worrying about the singles and what to be able to put out there, I mean, whether the label decides or the band decides, or it's equal between the two, I mean, what was it like trying to be able to decide what songs you wanted to release before the album's official release?
Honestly, I really try not to think about it too much when we're making the music. I mean, typically the shorter ones tend to get released as singles. I think just out of cold hard practicality, you tend to want to, you used to release to get radio play. These days when you release, you want to get on playlists, on DSPs, so for example on Spotify. And I think that the shorter tracks tend to do better on those kind of lists, and they're more likely to get added to the editorial ones. But I think we're just really hyper-conscious about, we want the album to work as a cohesive narrative and as something which works as a continuous listen, but also each track needs to stand up on its own and not sound disconnected from itself. So I think at that point we spoke a lot as a band, and we disagreed repeatedly. I don't mind admitting that Fugue was the one I really wasn't sure about releasing as a single, but everyone else was really keen to do it. And I'm so glad they pushed us to, because I now think it works brilliantly. It just wasn't an obvious choice to me when I heard the first round of mixes back. So it just goes to show that one of the great things about working in a group is that none of us are always right, and I'm very happy to have been wrong about that one.
Oh, totally. I love the fact that it came out as a single, and I think it really shows off the album, but in a different way as well, too. And I know that can be hard when it comes to singles, like being able to have the right vision out there, and sometimes it is just about, especially when it comes to progressive music like this, being able to show off some of the shorter songs rather than having people who may not be as familiar with a band listening through Hyperion, you know, being the longest song on the album in, you know, over 12 minutes. So, you know, it's a hard degree, but I mean, I'm glad that came out as a single along with everything else that has so far. But when you finally get to listen to the whole album, and when you can be a progressive fan like I am and really enjoy the more epic songs that's going on throughout, and then being able to hear more of the shorter visions of songs that's going on as well too, I think it's such a great balance that you got going throughout the album.
Well, thank you very much. I think balance is everything, isn't it? And but we're just hoping that other people enjoy it as much as we do, because it's such a nice feeling to look back and just think last year was difficult in a number of ways, but we've got something to show for it, and we've made something that we're really proud of. And at this point, I just can't wait till we can go and play it at a gig, because like you said at the start, that's really what it's all about for this kind of music, is the live show.
Oh, definitely, and I'm hoping that that can happen safely sometime in the near future. And I'm excited to see what can happen when things get back to some kind of normalcy, because this stuff deserves to be heard live. You guys deserve to be able to get back out and playing the live shows and being able to represent such a great album as Resident Human. Again, coming out on the 26th of this month. I can't recommend this album enough for so many different reasons. I mean, whether it's just being a progressive fan, whether you're looking at the sociological aspects of the world, whether you're able to enjoy just a lot of musical visions that's going on as well too, in so many great ebb and flows and high and low movements that's going on. I just love what's going on with this album, and it's been great to be able to talk to you about all of this. I mean, this is such a great album, and I'm very happy to be able to help represent in any case, and being able to talk to you as well too. I've had such a great time.
Honestly, thank you very much. Back at you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, that's so great to hear. So, before we're done here, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I hadn't brought up yet?
I think you've covered it pretty comprehensively. I guess just thank you to everyone who cares. We don't take any of it for granted, and it's an amazing feeling to be able to do this for a job and to make art for people who want to hear it. So, yeah, thank you for checking us out. And if you haven't, go listen to Resident Human and hit us up on our social media.